Hey guys, hoping all is well with everyone. So in this video we're going to be continuing the read-along of the Crime Traveler's Adventure Series Book 1, Brainwashed by Aertker. And we're going to be continuing today with Chapter 10, and as always, please feel free to follow along. Chapter 10, Curukians. With a mask stretched across his eyes, Lucas slept in his seat pod for the remainder of the flight. A few hours before sunrise on the longest day of the year, the plane landed outside a stone village 50 miles south of Paris. There the kids deplaned and went into a small private airport and through an office where a new resistance customs officer stamped their passports. Then they climbed 2 by 2 into large shipping containers that had been loaded onto the back of trucks. The inside of Lucas's shipping container had been converted into a cozy house with a miniature living room and kitchenette and bathroom. Car batteries supplied electricity. Custom built in Vancouver and modernized with RFID technology, the container was the new Resistance's newest ploy to infiltrate the good company. Astrid sat in the recliner and began reading. Lucas was starved and ready for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. He opened the tiny fridge, microwaved a pizza, and sat on the couch and ate. A few hours later, the shipping container slammed down on a loading dock. Lucas peered out of a one-way window and watched in horror. A clump of boys in black Curukians pushed through a heavy door and into a warehouse with wooden beams and stone walls. A sign on the wall read, "Good Company, Paris." The 5 teenagers crossed a loading dock and stopped abruptly as they eyed an enormous metal shipping container. Through the window, Lucas watched the boys approach. He turned on the exterior microphone. The first boy in line said, "What's this doing here?" "It's a shipping container," the last boy sneered. "It's supposed to be on a loading dock." "But we had no scheduled shipments today," said the first boy. "That's weird," said the boy behind him. "This container has the same markings as the one we saw in Vancouver." "They all look alike," said another. "Shut up," said the first boy. "What do you know? You lost the baby on that trip." The boy cracked his neck. "But I made up for it yesterday at the Eiffel Tower." The first boy opened his backpack, and with his tattooed hands he ripped a piece of duct tape off a roll. He stretched the tape across both doors. A second boy pulled a can of spray paint from under his shirt and tagged the door with big graffiti words. "Rafish Karuk," he said, as he spray painted the words over the tape. "That way we'll know next time if we've seen it before." "Mrs. Guarnero should know about this," said the first boy. "I'll send our island boys here to keep guard." Lucas stared through the window, trying to see if he recognized one of the boys from the van. He kept his eyes glued on the Curukians as they disappeared down a long corridor. A horrible feeling struck him. Seeing those boys in person had triggered something in him. He felt so out of place, lost, like a new kid thrown into hotel school. Now he was an outsider, this time in Paris, in another world, a corrupt adult world. Good company, bad company, they all had secrets. He had them too. Everybody had secrets. Everybody. It even made him wonder if the information he'd gotten from the boys in the van was true or not. He swallowed and looked back at Astrid, who was still sitting in the recliner, reading the history of kidnapping in French. Lucas scanned the inside of the container. His side of the room looked like a herd of goats had been camped out all night. In the few hours that it took to drive to the new Resistance airstrip, Lucas had amassed a pile of pizza boxes, sushi trays, and drink cans. Astrid set her book on the rug, looked at the trash around Lucas's couch, and shook her head. "That's nasty," Astrid said. She shuffled to the front and typed a code into a reader. With a bleep, the electronic bolt on the shipping container unlocked. The duct tape held the doors closed for a second, and then snap. The tape split and the doors opened. With a severe case of bedhead, Lucas stepped out of the container and onto a loading dock. "My hair hurts," he said, rubbing his head. "Looks great," Astrid said. He grinned. "I worked on it all night." To his left, stone walls formed a long corridor. "Let's find out where those boys went," said Lucas, moving toward a flickering light. Banks of fluorescent lights along the ceiling buzzed and blinked off and on. Water dripped from the ceiling, making the walls damp and the air musty. Stacked along the side walls, rusted barricades led haphazardly on one another. There were coils of hoses and cables and wire everywhere. "What's that mean?" Lucas asked, reading a sign on a door. "Sans issue," in French means what? Without issue? No, Astrid crinkled her nose. Sans issue means no exit. I thought there was another way to say no exit. Doesn't matter, said Astrid. It's not a good sign for us. Someone banged on the metal door. Lucas's eyes popped wide open. Astrid froze. The door slammed closed and the corridor's lights went out as someone muttered something in the dark. They crouched behind their shipping container in a nest of old telephone wires. From the hallway came the sounds of someone shuffling around. The person tripped over some sort of pipe, and it fell to the stone floor with a clatter. The lights went off and then came on again, followed by the clump of a cane. A moment later, a bald-headed boy wearing a faded Zidane soccer shirt limped into the room. He held a wooden cane in one hand, a newspaper under his arm, and an orangina in his other hand. The boy spoke English with a very strong accent. Is there someone? Then in French he said the same thing. Il y a quelqu'un? Lucas and Astrid stayed in the shadows and watched. Listen, said the boy. He tossed the orangina in the air like a ball. I am calling myself Herv'e Pivafanas, and I work with the New Resistance. Lucas followed Astrid as slowly inched out of the shadow. Bonjour, said the boy as he kissed Astrid on both cheeks and shook hands with Lucas. Astrid blushed but got straight to the point. So, Herv'e, she said, you have an orangina. But of course, said Herv'e. Several things were bothering Lucas at that moment. Top of his list was Jeannie. Where was she? And how would the ICMEC get her back to her parents in Egypt? Was she really Egyptian? And why had he promised to get her home? The second thing that didn't seem right was this French boy standing in front of him. Yes, he had an orangina bottle, which meant he had gotten Travis's code. But there was something that Lucas just didn't trust. Maybe it was the accent or the cane or possibly the bald head. He scratched sleep from his eyes and spoke without thinking. What's the deal? With the cane, I mean, he bluttered, his tone harsher than he had intended. And you're bald. No offense, but, how old are you? A bald-headed kid with a cane is, not what I was expecting. Astrid shot him a sidelong look. Lucas? I have 17 years, said Herv'e, and I have leukemia, the cancer, and for that I have chemotherapy and it makes me bald. For my leg, I am having surgery for the bone marrow. The French boy lifted his pant leg and showed a nasty burn scar on his calf. The muscle was largely missing, and his skin looked like bark on a dying tree. I'm sorry, said Lucas. My bad. Still, Lucas wasn't completely sold on Herv'e. He was hiding something. My brother's a little, Astrid offered with a roll of her eyes. I don't know. Jet-lagged? It is okay, said Herv'e. He leaned on his cane. I am coming to meet you today because... He glanced over his shoulder. Madame Guarnero, president of the Good Company, is arriving in moments, and the paparazzi will meet her outside the hotel. This is where we hope to learn of her plans. Madame Guarnero? Astrid asked. Is she married? I doubt it, said Herv'e. I call her Madame because she is old. Outside the heavy doors where the Curukians had entered the warehouse, a faint siren screeched, "Bee-doo, bee-doo," and the sound bleated louder than softer as the cars passed. But of course, said Herv'e in a serious tone, this must be her police escort. From the dark corridor there came another burst of noise, metal pipes clanging and a rattling and jiggling on the doorknob. Then somebody kicked the door open, and the sound blasted down the hallway. Apparently we have already Curukians, said Herv'e hurriedly. Island boys, you're to talk then fight. What? Said Lucas. Robbie explained all of this. Astrid glared at her brother. You need to listen. It's not that, said Lucas. I just don't believe everything I hear, especially when it's so... Believe this, said Herv'e. I am prepared to take revenge on Curukians for what they have done to me. This was all just too perfect for Lucas. He felt like he and Astrid were being set up. The boys in the corridor seemed to be arguing. Somebody knocked at the door, and it opened and then slammed closed. There was a slap, then another slap, and a crash into the metal barricades. The three Curukians were still arguing in what sounded like gibberish when they came into the light. They looked similar to the boys in the Watsistron video on the plane, a little overweight, in their mid-teens at best. Their thin peach fuzz mustaches looked like dirt under their noses. Their uniforms were all black, boots, pants, and mock turtleneck shirts with a Good Company logo on the front. The first boy spoke to Herv'e in English with a strange accent. "Still trying to help, eh, Herv'e?" Herv'e pulled his cane to his leg. "Better than beating you again in a boxing ring. Andri, nobody in your Madagascar orphanage knows how to box." The second Curukian boy shrugged. "Why not come back and help us, Herv'e?" He folded his arms, swelling his biceps. "You will never make money in the new resistance." Lucas knew he had been right about Herv'e. The French boy wasn't authentic new resistance. He knew these Curukian guys. "No thank you," said Herv'e. He glanced at Lucas and Astrid. "These boys will all tell you they are from Ravish Karuk, but in Tahitoa there is actually from Tahiti, and he doesn't know what we have in the new resistance." Now Lucas was really confused. Was Herv'e some sort of double agent? "What?" Andri said. "Them two little kids." "We do not care about them," said Tahitoa. "These kids are weak." As if to prove this point, Tahitoa walked straight up to Lucas and towered over him. Then he spat in Lucas's face. Lucas cringed and thought about saying something clever, but decided against it. With his forearm, he wiped the slobber from his cheek. This clearly was not a drill. For a split second, he thought crossed his mind to run, but he stayed put. Eventually, he knew he would have to stand his ground. Andrew's phone chirped with a text. "Madame Guarnero is walking to her hotel for a press conference." "Ha! She just got another baby," he said, showing the text to the third Curukian boy. "Maybe we should take these babies to Madame Guarnero too." As he spoke, Andrew grabbed Lucas's arm. Lucas's heart gave a painful jolt. He shook his arm free and took a step backward. The Malagasy boy then pushed him with both arms, and Lucas dropped to the ground. The three Curukian boys first bumped each other and laughed, apparently at how easy this was. For Lucas, the floor was exactly where he wanted to be. The boy who had spoken yet couldn't stop laughing at Lucas. "Yeah," he snorted. "Take them back with us. That way we can find out if they know what we think we know they think we know." Nobody seemed to understand him, but Andrea and Tahitoa acted like they did and kept laughing. "You so funny, Ukua," said the other island boys. Tahitoa then approached Astrid. He looked like he was going to slap her in the face, but she backed up before he could get too close. "Hey, pretty," he said. "Why not come with us?" "Thanks, guys," said Astrid, taking another step back. "I really appreciate it, but Herv'e and I already have plans." While Tahitoa had been embarrassing Astrid, Lucas had been crawling toward Herv'e. Andrew spotted Lucas and moving around. "Look at that little baby," he said. Still crouching, Lucas kept his head low. The boy called Ukua prepared to place a fat boot into Lucas's rib cage. Lucas's response was a surprise even to himself. From the ground, he snap-kicked Ukua in the chest, knocking him back to the other two boys. "Tss!" hissed Lucas as he jumped to his feet. He snatched Herv'e's cane and blasted out in a whirlwind of motion. The first two drops of adrenaline seeped into his blood. He landed two quick hook punches on Andrew and Tahitoa. Looking a little shocked, all three Curukian boys backed up. Protecting her face and chest, Astrid jumped into a guarded position behind her brother. The boys moved in. In the next half-second, Herv'e launched his newspaper into Ukua's face. It was a great move. The flying paper completely threw the boy off, and he swatted at it awkwardly. Lucas spun backward. He flapped the cane behind his head left, right slapping the other two boys behind him in the faces. They ran at Lucas, but his arms came sliding back behind him. His elbows nailed them in the guts, knocking the breath out of them. For Andrew, the impact seemed so sudden that he dropped to the ground without uttering a sound. Tahitoa scrambled to his knees. Slowly, the Tahitian pulled a blade from his sock and jabbed at Herv'e with it. With one snap of her wrist, Astrid Ridge punched the Tahitian in the temple. Tahitoa nearly fainted. He pulled both arms around his head and let go of the blade. Lucas dropped to the floor, spun, and back-kicked the boy in the chest. That was it. Ch10 slumped, writhing, in a fetal position on the ground. Yukua threw his entire body weight at Herv'e. Astrid gave Lucas a hand up. Instinctively, Lucas grabbed the cane and pointed it at Yukua. Lucas stepped back, casting the cane in the air like a fly rod, an extension of his own arm. The crook end of the cane hooked around Akua's legs. Lucas flipped the boy to the ground in one jerk motion. The boy's head hit the cobblestone flat. Lucas tossed the cane back to Herv'e, and they all looked at the three moaning boys. "Welcome," said Herv'e. "Welcome to the new resistance." Akua lifted his head. "Madame Guarnero says you will never remember." Fire lit in Herv'e's eyes. He jerked his head toward the boy and quickly snatched up the blade. He pounded on top of Akua's chest. Then with both hands he raised the knife and aimed it at Akua's throat. "I am starting to remember," said Herv'e. Herv'e grunted as he pumped the knife twice above his head. Akua squirmed, but Herv'e dug his knees deep into the boy's shoulders. Astrid screamed at what was about to happen. In one single motion, Lucas dove across the concrete floor. Herv'e pumped the knife a third time as Lucas's shoulder connected with Herv'e's armpit. The knife came down. The blade twisted and moved away from Akua's throat, nearly nicking his face. Lucas slapped Herv'e's forearm, and then the knife broke free, skittering across the floor as the three boys crumbled into a pile. "You can't kill them," Lucas said to Herv'e. "They don't know what they're doing. They're probably brainwashed and kidnapped." "Sri Lanka," said Akua. "That's my home, my real home, not Rafish, the one they make us say we're from." Then the boy buried his head in his lap and started to sob. I should have been brainwashed completely, like all the others. It would be easier not to remember anything." Lucas partly believed the boy and wanted to help him, but now was not the right time. "I'm sorry," Lucas said flatly. He looked to Astrid. "I need rope." In a flash, Astrid scooped up a clump of telephone wire and tossed it to her brother. Seconds later, Lucas had shown he was a true knot master. He tied a killer set of bowline knots on Andrea and Ch10 and roped their legs and arms like they were calves in a rodeo. With a series of hitches, Lucas lashed Akua to a barricade. "Let's get out of here," he said. "Wait," said Herv'e, who was still sitting on the ground. Lucas glanced back at the French boy and then nudged Astrid. With both palms on the floor, he pushed to the outside. What he saw was not at all what he had expected. And I'll stop the video there, ending chapter 10. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and in the next video we'll be continuing the read-along of the Crime Travelers Adventure Series Book 1 Brainwashed by Paul Aertker, continuing with chapter 11. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and please take good care of yourselves. See you soon. Bye.